or any of these, you simply will get whatever you get. That's it. Too bad. Because you're not a member of the STF, you don't have to get paid at the same level. So you may be a neighboring teacher from one community. You're a teacher, you got the same education, same experience, but we don't have to pay you that. So they're starting to cut all these different programs, but by the way, we're going to give you, in 2016, we're going to give you $1.2 billion. $1.2 billion. We'll give you that $400,000 or $400 million over each of those 3 years. And then Minister Valcora announces yesterday in a letter that came out to everybody saying, that's all new money. Really? It's called a shell game. You know, it's going to be new money because what they've done is they've taken the NCB dollars that they've set aside, they've taken our dollars, they've taken the AFN dollars, the FSIN dollars, the early intervention dollars. They put them into a pot of money, set it aside. They won't use it this next year, but in 2016 they'll give you new dollars. You see what I'm saying? These are not new dollars. They're just reprofiled dollars. It's a shell game. And we sit back and we go, oh, well, what do we do? Do we sit back and idly take it? Do we accept this? Because the reality is, the chief said to me out in Toronto, he said, the internet is our new gold, G-O-L-D. It's our new gold. If we don't get connected as First Nations with technology and the internet, we're hooped. Chief Bear gets up here and talks about the infrastructure is absolutely critical. He's absolutely right. But we can't do it without having the internet connectivity. We have to have that connectivity. We will never have the success with the health initiatives if we don't have the connectivity. We need these type of things to be paid for. And Aboriginal Affairs simply is taking the approach, well, you know what, I guess too bad. I just don't understand it. I don't understand how and why they can get away with this. Now, I know, so you guys okay with this, what I'm saying? I mean, I hope I'm not getting you all worked up here, but the reality is, I'm glad you stayed. But I knew when I got here I was going to speak and be the last speaker, and I thought, oh, this is going to be terrible. But I know that KCDC gives some great gifts at the end, and so a lot of you guys stayed here for the draw, so thank you for staying. So one of the things that we've been involved with at Aboriginal Affairs did create an initiative that said, hey, we want to see what we can do. All right, great. We'll talk about what we can do about some of the things in terms of funding. So we've put together a national learning group. So here's what's going to happen. I'll just kind of give you a heads up. The message that came down from Aboriginal Affairs says that virtual schools, e-learning schools will no longer be funded. That doesn't just mean us in Saskatchewan. It means Manitoba. It also means Alberta as well, too, and another project in Ontario. So it's not just us. We're all going to be being hit with this one. Bottom line is, though, that needs to happen is that we need a funding formula. So we did some calculating as a group recently to determine what is it that our schools need in terms of funding for technology and for e-learning. We think that there needs to be a separation. We don't want there to be any confusion as to there's e-learning as one pot of money, and then or e-learning and technology all in one pot. We want the two things to be separate. So we've recommended that they take your nominal roll, K to 12, and they actually calculate, based upon what the needs are for your students, that they pay a technology fee for each one of your kids based on your nominal roll. So we're suggesting from K to 12 that you actually have a nominal roll, you get a fee of $400 per student. Now multiply 400 by your nominal roll. If you've got 300 students in that school, what's that work out to? Come on. 120,000. Do you think you could live on 120,000 a year for technology budget? That's just technology we've been proposing. You see, the reason why we think that we put forward a funding formula for Aboriginal Affairs is because they love formulas. And they're starting to consider it. But if I'm the only one at the Ottawa and headquarters actually saying this, they'll just throw me out the door and say, too bad, you said it, thanks. But every one of you need to be coming forward with the same message, is what we're saying. Every one of us needs to demand this. We need at least a minimum of $400 per student for a technology budget. What is that going to take and provide for? That'll provide for your computers. It's going to provide for your technology internet connections. It's going to provide for some of the other hardware, some software issues. I think, and then also the personnel that's going to be able to help support that initiative in your school. 120,000 in a school of 300, you could probably live off of that with your technology budget, but we need to set a standard. Why do we say that it needs to be setting a standard? Let me tell you the reason why. That in the United States of America right now, they started the whole internet high school kind of scenario about the same time as Canada has. And in the United States, approximately, the numbers currently that are coming out of the States are saying that approximately 23 to 25% of the students are all using e-learning as their basic needs of getting an education. In Canada, we have stayed approximately about 5% across Canada for the last 9 years in e-learning. We haven't grown. And the only reason why I believe we haven't grown is we haven't got the funding. We're still dealing with archaic mentality out in headquarters that says, what? You can do education online? You can actually do something very similar to what, think about what we saw from the doctor. I was saying to Clint and some of these guys as well, I would sooner have one of those things scan in my hand to find out if I've got a rash on my hand than have go into a doctor's office, I think, and have them guess without even the microscope. That's very cool technology. We're promoting that kind of stuff and thinking that's fantastic. Well, what about our education? It shouldn't be any different. We need to get our kids prepared for the 21st century. We need to be promoting it. I still face day after day people going, I don't know how to use email. Teachers, I don't know how to check my email. Can you just mail that to me? Can you just fax it to me? Seriously? Like, when are we going to get on board? And if we continue with that mentality and promoting that, why would we get any more funding if we're not going to embrace the technology? So we've got to get on board here in terms of how it could benefit our communities and our students. So the bottom line is, there is an initiative that's being put forward. So $400 for K-12 per student based on your nominal is what was being put forward by this committee. In addition to that, we're putting forward that a base of 500 to 700 be provided for any student between grade 7 to 12. So if you're between grade 7 to 12, they would provide an additional $500 to $700 per student, and that would be targeted e-learning dollars, strictly for e-learning to pay for those courses. We believe that that would be a very workable solution for those e-learning initiatives, but the reality is, we need to have those dollars. So as we are currently facing right now, with the news of last week that they're not going to fund Credenda Virtual High School, we are now in the process of saying, well, if there's no funding and they want the bands to pay for it, when the bands are getting less money, there's no way that we as a charitable organization are going to come to the bands and say, you need to pay for this, because that's not the way we operate. So bearing in mind that we will not go back to the bands and ask for the money because you can't afford it. We understand that. The reality is that we have to take and say, well, maybe we need to start preparing ourselves for closing the doors. And so on the high school side, we're actually making those steps forward where we're going to say we have to either come up with a different plan. We met yesterday with the Ministry of Education on Saskatchewan side. They don't want to see us go. They want to see us continue to go forward. So maybe there's an opportunity for us to move into that domain and actually work something out and work other funding possibilities out of there. Or we have to shut the operation down. And it would be a shame. It would be a shame that we'd have to shut it down. We still have the college and the training initiative, which is going strong, and we'd have to either separate that out and having some talks with SIT and see maybe we can do some partnering. But there's ways we need to partner together, work together, and collaborate. And so that's where we are in the world of e-learning in terms of our challenges. But I once again, I want to really highlight First Nations folks, people who represent our First Nations folks, please go home and really, really get the message through to our chiefs and councils and so they can speak to our MPs and so forth. We have got to really address this matter at a national level. The people, like I said, at the region are only simply just telling us what they've been told to tell us. They're not the enemy. We need to deal with the people in Ottawa. So that's, I was going to have a bunch of slides and I decided just to wing it. So maybe, any questions?
I don't have a question, but I do have a couple of comments.